comparing Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates' high intensity interval training styles. Welcome to episode 86 of the Peak Performance Podcast. My name is Brad Young, and today we explore the revolutionary training methods that change bodybuilding forever and how these principles can transform your athletic performance across multiple sports and disciplines. The evolution of high intensity training since the 1960s. High intensity interval training has roots that stretch back over 6 decades, fundamentally challenging the conventional wisdom that more volume automatically equals better results. The 1960s marked a turning point in exercise science when researchers and practitioners began questioning whether traditional high volume training protocols were truly optimal for muscle growth and athletic performance. This period saw early pioneers experimenting with shorter, more intense training sessions that pushed the boundaries of muscular effort. The foundational concept emerged from understanding that muscles respond not to endless repetitions, but to the intensity of the stimulus applied during training. Early adopters discovered that by concentrating effort into brief, explosive sessions performed to absolute failure, they could trigger profound adaptations in muscle fiber recruitment, metabolic efficiency, and recovery mechanisms. This paradigm shift laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the heavy duty and blood and guts methodologies championed by Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates decades later. What began as experimental training protocols in university laboratories and forward thinking gym environments gradually gained scientific validation through controlled studies examining muscle hypertrophy, strength gains, and metabolic responses. The evolutionary trajectory from these early experiments to the refined systems used by championship bodybuilders represents one of the most significant developments in modern strength training theory. Understanding high intensity interval training principles. Core training philosophy. High intensity interval training operates on the principle that maximum muscular effort applied for brief periods creates superior adaptations compared to moderate effort sustained over longer durations. This approach prioritizes quality over quantity, demanding complete mental and physical commitment during each working set while allowing extended recovery periods between training sessions. Physiological foundation. The science reveals that muscles grow through mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. High intensity training maximizes all three factors simultaneously by recruiting the highest threshold motor units, depleting energy substrates completely and creating significant structural damage that triggers robust repair and adaptation processes during recovery periods. Research from exercise physiology laboratories has consistently demonstrated that training to momentary muscular failure activates satellite cells more effectively than submaximal efforts, stimulating protein synthesis pathways that remain elevated for 48 to 72 hours post workout. This extended anabolic window explains why high intensity training requires less frequent sessions while producing comparable or superior results to traditional higher volume approaches. Mike Mentzer's heavy duty training philosophy. Mike Mentzer revolutionized bodybuilding in the late 1970s and early 1980s with his heavy duty training system, which represented a radical departure from the prevailing high volume methodologies dominating the sport. Mentzer's approach stemmed from his deep study of exercise science, Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, and his own experimentation with training intensity versus volume. He recognized that most bodybuilders were overtraining, not allowing adequate recovery time for the profound adaptations that intense muscular effort could trigger. The heavy duty system emphasized performing single sets of exercises taken to complete muscular failure, where continuing the movement with proper form becomes physically impossible. Mentzer advocated for extremely low training volumes, often recommending that athletes train each body part only once every 7 to 10 days. This extended recovery period reflected his understanding that muscle growth occurs not during training, but during the recovery phase that follows intense stimulation. Mentzer incorporated advanced intensity techniques, including forced repetitions, where a training partner provides minimal assistance to complete additional repetitions beyond failure, and static holds, where the weight is held in a contracted position until the muscle can no longer sustain the tension. He preferred resistance machines over free weights because they provided consistent resistance throughout the entire range of motion and allowed safer execution when pushing to absolute failure without requiring a spotter for every exercise. Key principles of Mentzer's heavy duty approach: single set to failure. Mentzer advocated performing just one working set per exercise, but that set had to reach complete muscular failure, where another repetition becomes impossible despite maximum effort. This principle eliminated unnecessary volume while ensuring maximum intensity. Extended recovery periods. Training frequency was deliberately low, with body parts worked once every 7 to 10 days. Mentzer understood that growth happens during recovery, not during training sessions, and that insufficient rest prevents optimal adaptation and can lead to overtraining syndrome. Mental intensity focus. Heavy duty demanded absolute mental concentration during each set, requiring athletes to push beyond perceived limitations and embrace the discomfort of true muscular failure. Mentzer believed mental intensity was equally important as physical intensity for triggering growth. Scientific rationality. Every aspect of the heavy duty system was based on rational analysis of exercise physiology rather than anecdotal tradition. Mentzer constantly refined his methods based on emerging research and practical results, rejecting approaches that could not be logically justified. Dorian Yates' blood and guts training method. Dorian Yates built upon Mentzer's heavy duty foundation, but developed his own refined approach that he termed blood and guts training, which propelled him to 6 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles from 1992 to 1997. Yates maintained the core principle of training to failure with minimal volume, but introduced subtle yet significant modifications that suited his physiology and competitive goals. His approach demonstrated that high intensity training principles could be adapted and personalized while maintaining their essential effectiveness. While still adhering to low volume training compared to traditional bodybuilding routines, Yates trained body parts slightly more frequently than Mentzer recommended, typically hitting each muscle group once every 5 to 7 days. This modification allowed him to maintain the intense stimulation necessary for growth while providing adequate recovery. Yates also incorporated a broader range of intensity techniques, including rest pause sets, where brief rest periods allow additional repetitions beyond initial failure, partial repetitions that extend the set by working through shortened ranges of motion, and slow negative repetitions that maximize time under tension during the eccentric phase. Yates strategically combined free weights and machines throughout his training, recognizing that each equipment type offered unique benefits. Free weights provided natural movement patterns and required stabilization that enhanced functional strength, while machines allowed for safer execution of sets taken beyond failure and provided consistent resistance curves. This hybrid approach exemplified Yates' pragmatic philosophy of using whatever methods produced optimal results rather than adhering rigidly to any single tool or technique. Comparing Mentzer and Yates' training approaches. Training volume. Mentzer advocated extremely low volume with single working sets per exercise and training body parts once every 7 to 10 days. Yates used slightly higher volume while still remaining well below traditional protocols, training body parts once every 5 to 7 days to maintain momentum. Intensity techniques. Mentzer focused primarily on single sets to failure with forced repetitions and static holds. Yates expanded the intensity toolkit to include rest pause sets, partial repetitions, drop sets, and slow negatives, providing more variety in how muscles were pushed beyond failure. Equipment selection. Mentzer showed strong preference for resistance machines because they provided consistent resistance and allowed safer failure without spotters. Yates strategically combined free weights for compound movements with machines for isolation work, leveraging advantages of each equipment type. Philosophical approach. Mentzer developed heavy duty as a comprehensive system based on rational principles and exercise science, advocating strict adherence to his protocols. Yates took a more flexible approach, viewing intensity training as a framework that could be customized based on individual response and specific goals. The science behind high intensity training. Understanding the physiological mechanisms underlying high intensity training reveals why these methods produce such remarkable results, despite requiring significantly less time than traditional training approaches. The science centers on three primary factors that stimulate muscle growth: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. High intensity training maximizes all three simultaneously through brief but extraordinarily demanding efforts. Mechanical tension occurs when muscles generate force against resistance, with the highest tension levels achieved during maximal or near maximal contractions. Research demonstrates that motor unit recruitment follows the size principle, meaning lower intensity efforts recruit only smaller, less fatigue resistant muscle fibers, while high intensity efforts progressively recruit larger, more powerful fibers capable of significant growth. Training to failure ensures complete recruitment of all available motor units, maximizing the growth stimulus across the entire muscle. Metabolic stress results from the accumulation of metabolites like lactate, hydrogen ions, and inorganic phosphate during intense muscular work. These metabolites trigger cellular swelling and activate anabolic signaling pathways that promote protein synthesis. The burn sensation experienced during high intensity sets reflects this metabolic stress, which creates an environment conducive to growth adaptations. Muscle damage, the third growth factor, occurs when high tension contractions cause microscopic tears in muscle fibers, particularly during eccentric or lengthening contractions. This damage triggers an inflammatory response that initiates repair processes, with muscles rebuilding stronger and larger than before. High intensity training creates significant structural damage that necessitates extended recovery periods but produces robust adaptations once healing completes. Hormonal and metabolic responses to high intensity training. Acute hormonal surge. High intensity training to failure triggers substantial acute increases in growth hormone, testosterone, and insulin like growth factor 1, creating an optimal hormonal environment for muscle protein synthesis. These elevations occur within minutes of intense training and remain elevated during the early recovery period. Growth hormone specifically responds to metabolic stress and lactate accumulation, with blood levels increasing dramatically during and immediately after high intensity sets. While the duration of these acute spikes is brief, they contribute to the overall anabolic signaling that initiates muscle growth processes. Protein synthesis elevation. Perhaps most significantly, high intensity training elevates muscle protein synthesis rates for 48 to 72 hours post workout, explaining why frequent training sessions become counterproductive. This extended anabolic window means muscles continue building new proteins for days after a single intense session. Research using stable isotope tracers has demonstrated that protein synthesis rates can increase by 50 to 100% above baseline following intense resistance training, with the magnitude and duration of elevation correlating with training intensity rather than volume. The metabolic adaptations extend beyond muscle growth to include enhanced mitochondrial density, improved insulin sensitivity, and increased capacity for fat oxidation. High intensity training stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis through activation of pathways involving peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma coactivator 1 alpha, improving cellular energy production capacity. These metabolic improvements contribute to both performance enhancement and body composition changes, making high intensity training valuable for athletes across multiple disciplines beyond bodybuilding. Understanding body types and training response. Individual response to high intensity training varies significantly based on genetic factors, training history, recovery capacity, and body type characteristics. Understanding these differences allows for intelligent customization of training protocols to maximize results for each individual's unique physiology and goals. The concept of somatotypes, while somewhat oversimplified, provides a useful framework for considering how different body types might respond to various training stimuli. Ectomorphs, characterized by naturally lean builds with difficulty gaining muscle mass, often respond exceptionally well to high intensity training because it provides maximum growth stimulus without excessive volume that could interfere with recovery in individuals with fast metabolisms and limited recovery capacity. These athletes benefit from the low training frequency inherent in heavy duty and blood and guts approaches, allowing adequate time for their bodies to complete the muscle building process between sessions. Mesomorphs blessed with naturally athletic builds and efficient muscle building capacity typically respond positively to virtually any training approach, but may find high intensity training particularly effective for breaking through plateaus or maintaining muscle mass while reducing training time commitment. These individuals often possess superior recovery capacity that allows them to potentially train slightly more frequently than pure Mentzer protocols suggest while still adhering to low volume principles. Endomorphs prone to easier fat gain alongside muscle development benefit from high intensity training's metabolic demands, which support favorable body composition changes. The intense metabolic stress and hormonal responses triggered by training to failure enhance fat oxidation and insulin sensitivity, complementing dietary efforts to maintain leanness while building muscle mass. Determining if high intensity training suits your goals. Assess your primary training goal. High intensity training excels for muscle hypertrophy, strength development, and body composition improvement. Athletes seeking maximum muscle mass with minimal time investment find these methods ideal. However, those training for pure endurance, sport specific skill development, or activities requiring frequent high quality practice sessions may need to modify the approach or consider alternative methods that allow more frequent training without compromising recovery. Evaluate your recovery capacity. Successful implementation of high intensity training depends critically on adequate recovery between sessions. Consider your sleep quality, stress levels, nutritional habits, age, and other life demands when determining whether you can properly recover from sessions taken to true muscular failure. Athletes with demanding work schedules, poor sleep patterns, or high life stress may need to modify training frequency or intensity to avoid overtraining. Consider your training experience. While beginners can benefit from high intensity principles, the mental and physical demands of training to true failure require learning proper exercise technique and developing the ability to push beyond discomfort safely. Novice trainees may need several months of preparatory training to build work capacity and technical proficiency before implementing full heavy duty or blood and guts protocols effectively. Test your individual response. The only definitive way to determine if high intensity training suits your physiology is through systematic experimentation. Commit to following the protocols faithfully for at least 8 to 12 weeks while carefully tracking strength progression, body composition changes, energy levels, and recovery quality. Objective measurements reveal whether your body responds positively to this training stimulus or requires modification. Cycling a high intensity training for optimal results. While high intensity training produces remarkable results, the extreme demands it places on the neuromuscular and endocrine systems make intelligent cycling essential for long term progress and injury prevention. Periodization strategies that vary training intensity, volume, and frequency prevent adaptation stagnation, reduce overtraining risk, and allow for strategic recovery periods that support continued gains over months and years rather than weeks. A basic cycling approach involves alternating between phases of maximum intensity training following pure heavy duty or blood and guts protocols and deload phases where training intensity, volume, or frequency is reduced to allow systemic recovery. A typical cycle might include 6 to 8 weeks of high intensity training, followed by 1 to 2 weeks of reduced intensity work, using lighter weights for fewer sets or reducing training frequency by half while maintaining movement patterns and technique practice. More advanced periodization models incorporate distinct mesocycles, targeting different training adaptations. An athlete might spend 4 to 6 weeks emphasizing neural adaptations at a maximum strength, using very low repetition ranges of 3 to 5 repetitions, followed by a hypertrophy phase using moderate repetition ranges of 6 to 12 repetitions taken to failure, then transition to a metabolic conditioning phase using higher repetitions of 15 to 20 while maintaining high intensity. Each phase builds upon all adaptations from the previous phase while preventing overuse injuries from repetitive stress. Annual macro cycles should include at least one extended recovery period of 2 to 4 weeks where training intensity is significantly reduced or athletes engage in completely different activities. This strategic break allows complete recovery from accumulated fatigue, prevents psychological burnout, and often precedes periods of rapid progress as the body supercompensates from the extended rest. Many successful athletes schedule these recovery periods during natural breaks in their competitive season or during times when life demands make intense training difficult to sustain. Sample high. Intensity workout for ectomorph body types. Ectomorphs benefit most from strict adherence to minimal volume principles with extended recovery periods. This sample, full body routine performed once every 5 to 7 days provides complete stimulation while allowing ample recovery time. Each exercise should be performed for one working set, taken to complete muscular failure after thorough warm up sets using progressively heavier weights. Squat or leg press, 6 to 8 repetitions to complete failure. Focus on controlled descent, taking 3 seconds, brief pause at bottom position, then explosive concentric drive. This compound movement provides maximum lower body stimulation with minimal sets, perfect for the ectomorph's limited recovery capacity. Deadlift or rack pull, 4 to 6 repetitions to failure. Execute with perfect form, emphasizing hip hinge mechanics and maintaining neutral spine throughout. The deadlift provides comprehensive posterior chain development from a single intense set, making it ideal for ectomorphs who must maximize efficiency. Chest press machine or barbell bench press, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure, optionally followed by 2 to 3 forced repetitions with partner assistance. This pushing movement develops the entire chest, shoulders, and triceps complex through one intense set rather than multiple exercises for each muscle group. Pull down or chin ups, 6 to 10 repetitions to failure. For those capable of body weight chin ups, add resistance using a weight belt. For those not yet strong enough, use assisted chin up machine or lat pull down. This pulling movement balances the pushing work while developing back thickness and biceps with minimal volume. Overhead press, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure. Use either barbell, dumbbells, or machine press depending on shoulder health and preference. Direct shoulder work ensures complete upper body development from this minimal volume routine. This entire workout should be completed in 35 to 45 minutes, including warm-up sets. The ectomorph should then allow 5 to 7 full days before repeating the routine, focusing on recovery, nutrition, and sleep during rest days. Progressive overload is achieved by adding small amounts of weight to each exercise once all target repetitions can be completed with proper form. Sample high intensity workout for mesomorph body types. Mesomorphs can typically handle slightly more training frequency or volume than ectomorphs, while still benefiting from high intensity principles. This sample employs an upper lower split performed twice weekly, allowing each body region to be trained every 5 to 6 days with moderate volume per session. Each exercise uses 1 to 2 working sets taken to failure. Upper body day. Inclined barbell press, 2 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure. Bent over barbell row, 2 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure. Seated dumbbell press, 1 set, 8 to 10 repetitions to failure. Weighted dip, 1 set, 6 to 10 repetitions to failure using rest pause technique. Barbell curl, 1 set, 8 to 10 repetitions to failure plus partial repetitions. Line triceps extension, 1 set, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Lower body day. Back squat, 2 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure. Romanian deadlift, 2 sets, 8 to 10 repetitions to failure. Leg press, 1 set, 10 to 15 repetitions to failure with drop set. Leg curl, 1 set, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure with slow negatives. Standing calf raise, 2 sets, 12 to 15 repetitions to failure. Hanging leg raise. One set, 10 to 15 repetitions to failure. Mesomorphs should perform this split on a Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday schedule, ensuring at least 2 full days between upper body sessions and between lower body sessions. The additional set on major compound movements reflects the mesomorph's enhanced recovery capacity, while single sets on isolation movements maintain the low volume principle. Intensity techniques like rest pause, drop sets, and forced repetitions can be incorporated strategically on the final set of exercises to push beyond initial failure safely. Sample high intensity workout for endomorph body types. Endomorphs benefit from high intensity training's metabolic demands while requiring strategic exercise selection that maximizes caloric expenditure alongside muscle development. This sample uses a 3-day split with slightly higher repetition ranges and incorporates compound movements that engage maximum muscle mass to support body composition goals. Day 1, legs and core. Front squat, 2 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Walking lunge, 1 set, 10 to 15 repetitions per leg to failure. Leg press, 1 set, 15 to 20 repetitions to failure with drop set. Stiff leg deadlift, 2 sets, 10 to 12 repetitions to failure. Leg curl, 1 set, 12 to 15 repetitions to failure. Weighted plank, 1 set, maximum time to failure. Cable crunch, 1 set, 15 to 20 repetitions to failure. Day 2, push muscles. Incline dumbbell press, 2 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Flat barbell bench press, 1 set, 8 to 10 repetitions to failure with forced reps. Cable crossover, 1 set, 12 to 15 repetitions to failure. Seated dumbbell press, 2 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Lateral raise, 1 set, 12 to 15 repetitions to failure with partials. Overhead triceps extension, 2 sets, 10 to 15 repetitions to failure. Day 3, pull muscles. Deadlift, 2 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions to failure. Weighted pull up or lat pull down, 2 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Seated cable row, 1 set, 10 to 12 repetitions to failure with slow negatives. Face pull, 1 set, 15 to 20 repetitions to failure. Barbell curl, 2 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. Hammer curl, 1 set, 10 to 15 repetitions to failure. Endomorphs should perform this routine on alternating days such as Monday, Wednesday, Friday, ensuring 48 hours between sessions targeting different muscle groups. The slightly higher repetition ranges and inclusion of multiple compound movements increase total work performed while maintaining the intensity to failure principle. Endomorphs should pay particular attention to rest periods between sets, keeping them just long enough to ensure full effort on the next set while maintaining an elevated heart rate throughout the session. Implementing high intensity principles in other sports. While Mentzer and Yates developed their high intensity methodologies specifically for bodybuilding, the underlying principles translate powerfully to virtually any sport or physical endeavor requiring strength, power, or muscular endurance. The key lies in adapting the core concepts of maximum intensity, minimal effective volume, and adequate recovery to suit sport specific movement patterns and energy system demands. Sprinters and track athletes benefit enormously from high intensity strength training that develops explosive power without adding unnecessary muscle mass or fatigue that could compromise sprint specific practice. A minimalist approach using exercises like trap bar deadlifts, box squats, and plyometric variations performed to maximum intensity for very low volume allows these athletes to build crucial strength and power while preserving energy and recovery capacity for their primary sport demands. Team sport athletes, including football, basketball, soccer, and rugby players, can leverage high intensity training during off season and preseason phases to build maximum strength and muscle mass that translates to improved on field performance. During competitive seasons, a single weekly high intensity session maintains strength levels without interfering with game preparation, tactical training, and recovery from competition. The low time commitment proves particularly valuable for athletes managing complex training schedules. Combat sport athletes in boxing, mixed martial arts, wrestling, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu find high intensity training invaluable for building functional strength and maintaining muscle mass while managing significant training volumes in their technical and conditioning work. Strategic implementation of 1 to 2 brief, intense strength sessions weekly provides the stimulus needed for continued strength development without competing for recovery resources with skill practice and sparring. High intensity training for endurance athletes. Benefits for distance runners. Distance runners traditionally avoid heavy resistance training for misguided fears about adding non functional muscle mass. However, research demonstrates that properly implemented strength training improves running economy, injury resistance, and performance in the final stages of races when fatigue accumulates. High intensity strength training provides these benefits through minimal time investment that does not compromise running volume. Runners should focus on unilateral lower body exercises like Bulgarian split squats, single leg Romanian deadlifts, and step ups that address muscular imbalances while building strength through movement patterns similar to running mechanics. Upper body work should emphasize postural muscles that maintain proper form during late race fatigue. 1 or 2 sessions weekly of 3 to 4 exercises performed to failure provide sufficient stimulus. Applications for cyclists. Cyclists benefit from high intensity training that builds lower body power while improving muscular endurance in positions specific to cycling. Emphasis should be placed on developing the quadriceps, glutes, and hip flexors through exercises that can be performed without excessive soreness that would interfere with riding. Machine based exercises often work better than free weights for cyclists due to reduced core demands and more direct muscle targeting. Key exercises include leg press performed through ranges of motion, similar to cycling, leg extensions for quadriceps development, and Romanian deadlifts for posterior chain work. Core training should emphasize stability rather than dynamic movements. A single weekly session during base training phases builds strength that transfers to improved power output on the bike without compromising training volume or recovery. Adapting high intensity training for older athletes. Athletes over 40 years old face unique challenges, including decreased recovery capacity, increased injury risk, and age related muscle loss called sarcopenia. High intensity training principles remain valid and perhaps even more important for this population, but implementation requires thoughtful modifications that account for physiological changes while preserving the core stimulus needed for continued strength development and muscle maintenance. Older athletes should extend recovery periods between training sessions, potentially training each body part once every 7 to 10 days rather than every 5 to 7 days. This extended recovery window accounts for slower protein synthesis rates and longer tissue repair times that occur with advancing age. However, the intensity during training sessions should remain high, as research shows that older adults require the same high threshold motor unit recruitment achieved through training to failure to stimulate muscle protein synthesis effectively. Exercise selection should prioritize joint friendly movements that minimize injury risk while still allowing maximum muscular effort. Machine exercises often work better than free weights because they provide support that reduces stress on joints and connective tissues while allowing safe training to failure. Movements should avoid extreme ranges of motion that place undue stress on joints, with focus instead on working through mid ranges where mechanical advantage is favorable and injury risk minimized. Warm up becomes increasingly critical for older athletes, with extended preparation including light cardiovascular work to increase tissue temperature, dynamic mobility exercises to prepare joints for loading, and multiple progressive warm up sets before working sets. A thorough 15 to 20-minute warm up prevents injuries and actually improves performance on working sets by ensuring optimal neural activation and tissue readiness. Older athletes should view comprehensive warm up as essential rather than optional. Chapter 8: Nutrition Strategies to Support High Intensity Training. High intensity training places extraordinary demands on the body's recovery systems, making nutrition absolutely critical for realizing the full benefits of these demanding protocols. The anabolic window following intense training sessions requires strategic nutrient timing to maximize muscle protein synthesis, replenish depleted glycogen stores, and manage inflammation from training induced muscle damage. Protein requirements. Athletes training with high intensity methods should consume 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, distributed across 4 to 5 meals to maintain elevated amino acid availability throughout the day. The meal immediately following training should contain 25 to 40 grams of high quality protein to capitalize on heightened muscle protein synthesis. Carbohydrate needs. While not as critical as protein, adequate carbohydrate intake supports training intensity and recovery. Athletes should consume 3 to 5 grams per kilogram body weight daily, depending on total training volume and body composition goals. Timing carbohydrates around training sessions ensures glycogen availability for maximum training intensity while supporting recovery processes. Fat and micronutrients. Dietary fat should comprise 20 to 35% of total calories, emphasizing omega 3 fatty acids that modulate inflammation and support recovery. Micronutrient intake from vegetables, fruits, and whole foods supports the increased metabolic demands of muscle growth and recovery. Strategic supplementation with vitamin D, zinc, and magnesium may benefit athletes with deficiencies. Caloric intake must be sufficient to support muscle growth, with athletes typically requiring a modest surplus of 200 to 500 calories above maintenance levels. However, excessive surplus leads to unnecessary fat gain rather than accelerated muscle growth, as protein synthesis rates have an upper limit beyond which additional calories are stored as fat. Athletes should monitor body composition changes and adjust intake based on observed results rather than blindly following theoretical calculations. Recovery protocols for maximum adaptation. Recovery is not passive rest, but an active process requiring deliberate attention to maximize adaptations from high intensity training. The extended period between training sessions provides an opportunity to implement recovery strategies that accelerate muscle protein synthesis, reduce excessive inflammation, and prepare the body for the next intense training bout. Sleep optimization. Sleep represents the most critical recovery tool, with muscle protein synthesis, growth hormone secretion, and tissue repair occurring predominantly during deep sleep stages. Athletes should prioritize 7 to 9 hours of high quality sleep nightly, maintaining consistent sleep and wake times, even on weekends, to optimize circadian rhythm alignment. Active recovery. Light activity on rest days, including walking, swimming, or gentle cycling, promotes blood flow that delivers nutrients to recovering muscles while removing metabolic waste products. This low intensity movement should feel restorative rather than fatiguing, keeping heart rate below 60% of maximum throughout the activity. Stress management. Psychological stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, elevating cortisol levels that can interfere with recovery and muscle protein synthesis. Implementation of stress management techniques, including meditation, breathing exercises, or enjoyable leisure activities, supports optimal adaptation to training stress by preventing chronic cortisol elevation. Common mistakes when implementing high intensity training. Training to perceived rather than true failure. Many athletes believe they have reached muscular failure when they have actually stopped several repetitions short due to discomfort rather than true inability to continue. True failure means the weight cannot be moved through proper form despite maximal effort. Learning to distinguish between discomfort and genuine failure requires practice and often benefits from experienced coaching to push beyond self imposed limitations. Insufficient recovery between sessions. The temptation to train more frequently undermines the entire high intensity approach. Athletes accustomed to high volume training often feel guilty about extended rest periods and add extra sessions that prevent complete recovery. Trust the science and resist this temptation, understanding that growth occurs during recovery, not during training. More is not better when intensity is truly maximized. Adding excessive volume. Another common mistake involves performing multiple working sets per exercise when one set to failure would suffice. Additional sets provide diminishing returns while exponentially increasing recovery demands. If you can perform multiple sets to true failure, either the intensity on early sets was insufficient or recovery capacity is being exceeded, stick to the prescribed minimal volume. Poor exercise form and technique. Training to failure amplifies the importance of proper technique because form typically deteriorates as fatigue accumulates. Athletes must maintain technical proficiency throughout the set. Only continuing repetitions that can be completed through full range of motion with proper form. Allowing form breakdown to achieve additional repetitions increases injury risk while reducing training effectiveness by removing tension from target muscles. Neglecting progressive overload. While high intensity training requires minimal volume, progressive overload remains essential for continued adaptation. Athletes must systematically increase training loads by adding small increments of weight once all target repetitions can be completed with proper form. Repeating the same weights week after week produces stagnation once initial adaptations are exhausted. Keep detailed training logs and pursue consistent progression. Resources. Essential reading on Mike Mentzer's heavy-duty training. For athletes seeking deeper understanding of Mike Mentzer's training philosophy and practical implementation strategies, several resources provide comprehensive information directly from Mentzer and from researchers who have studied his methods scientifically. Heavy Duty by Mike Mentzer. Mentzer's original book, published in 1993, remains the definitive guide to his training system, explaining the philosophical foundations, scientific rationale, and specific protocols he advocated. The book includes detailed workout routines for beginners through advanced athletes, along with nutrition guidance and strategies for breaking through plateaus. High Intensity Training, The Mike Mentzer Way by Mike Mentzer. Published in 2003, this later work refined and updated Mentzer's thinking based on additional years of coaching experience. It addresses common questions and misconceptions about heavy-duty training while providing more extensive exercise descriptions and troubleshooting advice for athletes implementing the system. The Mentzer Method to Fitness by Mike Mentzer. This comprehensive guide expands beyond pure strength training to address cardiovascular conditioning, flexibility work, and overall fitness development using high-intensity principles. Mentzer applies his rational, evidence-based approach to all aspects of physical development, creating an integrated system for complete fitness. Scientific articles and studies. Numerous peer-reviewed studies have examined high-intensity training principles, with particularly relevant research appearing in journals including Medicine and Science, in Sports and Exercise, Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, and European Journal of Applied Physiology. Search terms including high-intensity resistance training, training to failure, and single-set training yield relevant scientific literature. Essential reading on Dorian Yates' training methods. Dorian Yates documented his training philosophy and specific techniques through multiple books and video productions that provide invaluable insights into how he adapted high-intensity principles to achieve championship-level success. Blood and Guts by Dorian Yates. This autobiography and training guide chronicles Yates' journey from the novice bodybuilder to six-time Mr. Olympia champion, while detailing the training methods that made him successful. The book includes complete workout routines, exercise technique descriptions, and insights into the mental approach required for training with maximum intensity consistently over years. A Warrior Story by Dorian Yates. Yates' autobiography provides context for understanding how his training philosophy developed, including his discovery of Mike Mentzer's work and his process of adapting those principles to suit his physiology and goals. The book offers valuable perspectives on the mindset and dedication required for achieving elite performance in any athletic endeavor. Dorian Yates' Blood and Guts training videos. Video documentation of Yates' actual training sessions provides unprecedented insight into how he implemented high-intensity principles in practice. Watching these sessions reveals the focus, technique precision, and genuine intensity required, offering far more practical guidance than written descriptions alone can provide. Multiple video series are available documenting different training phases and body part specialization. Measuring progress and adjusting your approach. Successful implementation of high intensity training requires systematic tracking of multiple metrics that collectively indicate whether your body is responding positively to the training stimulus. Objective measurements remove guesswork and emotion from training decision, allowing data driven adjustments that optimize results. Strength progression. Track the weight, repetitions, and intensity techniques used for each exercise in every workout. Progressive overload remains the primary indicator of successful training, with consistent increases in training loads demonstrating positive adaptation. Stagnant or decreasing performance suggests inadequate recovery or ineffective programming requiring adjustment. Maintain detailed training logs, including date, exercises, weights, repetitions achieved, and subjective ratings of difficulty and recovery status. Review logs weekly to identify trends and ensure consistent progression over multiple weeks, even if individual sessions fluctuate. Body composition changes. Monitor body weight, body fat percentage, and circumference measurements at multiple sites, weekly or biweekly. Use consistent measurement protocols at the same time of day under similar conditions to ensure valid comparisons. Progress photos taken monthly under standardized lighting conditions often reveal changes that numerical measurements miss. Expect muscle gain of approximately 0.5 to 1 pound weekly for novice trainees, 0.25 to zero point 0.5 pounds weekly for intermediate athletes, and even slower rates for advanced individuals. Fat loss while gaining muscle is possible for beginners but becomes increasingly difficult as training age increases. Recovery quality indicators, including sleep quality, energy levels throughout the day, mood stability, and appetite, provide subjective but valuable feedback about whether training stress matches recovery capacity. Persistent fatigue, decreased motivation, or mood disturbances suggest excessive training stress requiring reduced frequency or intensity until symptoms resolve. The path forward: implementing your high intensity training journey. Understanding the principles, science, and practical applications of high intensity training, as pioneered by Mike Mentzer and refined by Dorian Yates, provides the foundation for transformative results. However, knowledge alone changes nothing. Without consistent implementation and dedication to the process over months and years rather than days and weeks. Begin conservatively, selecting exercises you can perform with excellent technique and gradually building familiarity with training to true muscular failure. The mental and physical demands of maximum intensity training require adaptation, with most athletes needing several weeks to develop the psychological resilience to push through the profound discomfort that accompanies genuine failure. Start with submaximal efforts and progressively increase intensity as technical proficiency and mental toughness improve. Commit to following your chosen protocol faithfully for at least 12 weeks before making significant changes, allowing sufficient time for adaptations to manifest. The temptation to constantly modify programming based on daily fluctuations undermines progress by preventing the consistent stimulus needed for long-term adaptation. Trust the process, embrace the discomfort of hard training and extended rest, and allow the proven principles to work. Remember that high intensity training represents one effective approach among many valid training methodologies. While the science supporting these methods is robust and the results achieved by Mentzer, Yates, and countless others prove their effectiveness, individual variation means some athletes may respond better to alternative approaches. Use objective measurements to guide decisions, remaining willing to adjust when data indicates modification is warranted. The journey toward peak performance through high intensity training requires patience, consistency, rational thinking, and unwavering commitment to maximum effort during training sessions, balanced with complete dedication to recovery between sessions. Apply these principles with intelligence and persistence, and the remarkable transformations achieved by the pioneers of this training philosophy become attainable for dedicated athletes willing to embrace the challenge.